This is now the seventh lecture in Intro to Mobile. We've looked at the 8 principles of UI design. What we're going to look at now is some human interface guidelines from both iOS and Android. And it shouldn't be a big surprise that these are going to follow pretty closely the 8 principles we've already looked at. So, iOS human interface guidelines, and again, if you look in the citations for this lecture, you'll see that, well, actually, since this is a new recording, let me go ahead and show it again. Okay, let me to move this for a second. Okay, these are the references I'm using in this recording, both iOS and Android, and also a textbook. So, okay, I'm back again. So I've paraphrased a bit from those sites. Okay, iOS Human Interface Guidelines base design on the way people think, not on the device. As I mentioned in the prior recording, when it's easier for me to think about a seat map on an aircraft when I'm choosing my seat over thinking of actually a seat number. Okay? Aesthetic integrity. Okay, we want to give the appropriate appearance for the app. Finding my seat on an aircraft is going to be a different experience from maybe playing a game. If you think of a game you play, maybe poker or any kind of online game you might play with your friends, it's going to be a lot more graphically intense with a lot more moving parts. So the aesthetic integrity will depend on what our audience is, what our app is. There'll be a much different standard for a game than there would be for just an information finding app. Consistency. Follow standards from other apps for fast learning. We talked about this in the last recorded lecture as well. We know that, if we think about common widgets that we'll see on a screen, an editable text field means that the user has an opportunity to change and save that text. We should use that only for information that the user can save and change. We shouldn't use it for read-only information. Okay? Checkbox means you can pick 0 or you can pick all or somewhere in between. Radio button means you can pick only one. Hyperlink usually is underlined, not as much anymore as it used to be, but oftentimes it's underlined, and that many times means navigate to a different page without saving. Buttons tend to indicate we are submitting data to a website. So follow these standards that we've set. Buttons only need to be clicked once, not twice, things like that. Okay. Direct manipulation, interact with objects instead of separate controls. This is one thing that I know is an improvement point for Plant Places Mobile. If you go to the search by color and you search by file, by a picture that's already on the memory card, it brings up a text-based list of images, which is not very intuitive to the user. It should instead actually show those pictures in gallery view. That would be interacting with the object itself instead of interacting with some abstraction of the object. So that's something that needs to be fixed. I'll go ahead and choose. I just chose open existing image here. One moment, I have a breakpoint there. I'm going to have to play through. There we go. Okay, well, I think we got it there. Do I have any more? Let me play one more time. Play through there. Okay. So you see, what this should really do is this should pull up a gallery view, because I don't know what promo graphic looks like. I know it's file size here. I don't know what it looks like. It would be better if I actually showed a gallery of pictures and allowed the user to flip through them. This is not a very intuitive user interface. On the other hand, when we do pick the picture and it gives us the 12 colors that it found from that picture, I do like that interface, and it is one I struggled with for a while, because my initial thought was have the user actually tap on the photo and then figure out what color the user tapped on, but that's not very intuitive, because a tap is going to be roughly a 48 pixel by 48 pixel area, and which one of those am I going to choose to be the color that the user selected? Here, on the other hand, I'm making it easy for the user by saying, well, these are the top 12 colors I found. Is there one of these you want to look at? And each color is roughly big enough for a user to tap on. Okay. Now you might say, wait a minute though, it didn't get all the colors. What it will do is it will actually sample the entire image and then put a second sampling right in the middle. So colors that are right in the middle get weighted a little bit heavier because the thought is when you're taking a picture, chances are you're focused on the color in the middle, not one in the periphery. So I'm a little happier with this screen, but the open an existing image screen, I realize there could be some improvements there. Okay. Feedback. Give the user immediate feedback when touching the control. If there is a process that will take some time, let the user know. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and click this kind of mauve color down here. And normally on the real app, it actually is pretty quick. On the emulator, it's a bit slower. On the live app, usually results come almost right away. As soon as we get some results, then we're going to be able to click and we're going to be able to go to the next screen. And what we'll see, if I can get it to come up, I'm going to click on Calicanthus. Okay. Whoops, sorry, I just hit it. Let me bring the emulator back. What we'll see is when it renders the page, a little note will come up at the bottom that says the page is rendering, 1 moment please. There we go. Quick and concise, loading, 1 moment please. Okay. Reason we want to do that is if it is going to take a lot of time, what's going to happen is the user will tend to click very frequently, keep clicking, okay? That could cause even more problems. But if we tell the user, okay, we got it, we're working on it, the user is less likely to continue to click and think something's wrong. Metaphors. This is a big one in the Windows day. You know, we look at folders, so I click up on UC, and we see that a folder, a directory, is represented by a manila file folder. If you're old like me, you'll remember when we used to actually use the physical folder. That's a metaphor because it's saying what's in here is going to be a bunch of files. In our old DOS days, we didn't have that. So with DOS, let me pull up a command prompt here. With DOS, we didn't really have that analogy. We had to use more cryptic commands. So just a moment. Okay. So here's a DOS prompt, and you see it puts me in C users Brandon, but there's no metaphor here that says that is a folder. So I don't know what C users Brandon is unless I figured it out somehow. I type in dir and I can see all the files in this folder. I can type in CD videos, okay, and I go to that folder. But you see that this is more computer language. It's something that I have to learn. Or on the other hand, if we have a visual folder, the user's going to more quickly learn, oh, okay, this is a storage device. There can be files inside of this. It's easier for a user to understand. Okay? An app can suggest an action, but the user has the final decision. Remember I told you in the last recording about when my flight to Boston was delayed and I was going to miss my connection. I went to the app and it suggested that I take a different flight, but then it let me decide. That's a perfect example of user control. Take the data, make a suggestion based on an optimization of the data, and then let the user decide. If you do have a process that's taking too long, allow the user to cancel out of it. You can probably think of applications you've used in the past where you accidentally hit a submit button and it takes forever and the entire user interface locks up so that you can't use it. That's bad design. It's better if you're having an operation that's going to take a while, give the user a chance to say, I want to cancel, I want to go back to what I was doing before. This again goes to that concept of threading. What we oftentimes need to do is take this long-running process and put it into a different thread. That gives us the ability to cancel that operation. Okay. UI controls, we've talked about a lot of this already. Use controls as the user expects to see them. Okay, use hyperlinks to take the user to another page. Use radio buttons for you must select one and only one. Use checkboxes for you can select 0, you can select all, or you can select something in between. Okay, use controls that the users understand. Designed for a platform. Here I've cited, this is so important that there are a lot of quality rules around here. And in Android, these are actually, I took a lot of these from Apple's website, but then I cross-referenced it with the Android quality steps. So with Android, you have to go through a quality checklist. I mean, it's kind of on the honor system. You should do it, but you have to go through a quality checklist before you deploy. And each of the items on that quality checklist has a reference. So what I've done here is I've taken the Apple suggestions and I've referenced those with the Android quality checklist. Handle orientation changes gracefully. Okay, what that means is if you take your phone in portrait mode, switch it to landscape mode, switch it back to portrait mode, you shouldn't lose data. You also shouldn't crash. It might sound like you get that automatically, but honestly you don't. When you're designing a mobile app, if you're not careful here, it could either lose your data or crash, both of which are not good events for the user. So these are things that we want to actively manage when we're designing our mobile app. We want to make sure we can change orientation gracefully. Okay. There are many types of devices, especially with Android, where there are different manufacturers. Oh, that didn't directly come from Apple's website. I paraphrased that. Handle them with fluid layouts. So don't hard code to one layout. We used to do this back in the 90s when all monitors were 12 inches. It was a very bad idea. Plan for layouts that can change as the user changes orientation. Okay? Plan for layouts that look good on small devices and on large devices alike. Okay? It's not the web, so hovers don't work. You can't hover over navigation. And navigation works differently. You typically won't present the user with as many navigation options as you might see on a website. So again, on the Plan Places website, you'll see a lot of choices on the left and a lot of choices on the top as well. You wouldn't see that on the mobile site. That's just too overwhelming. As a matter of fact, if I do search for Cercis canadensis, okay, which is the redbud. Uh-oh. Oh, you know what? I need to zero out these as well. Hang on 1 second. Okay. If I do search for the redbud tree and then I pull up the detail page for the redbud tree, what we'll find is that it has its own... Come on, let's go back. Let's try that again. Okay, Plan Places Home. What we'll find... Oh, you know what? I know what's going on. I'm uploading the last video now, and I think it's slowing down my connection. But in any case, if we search for a tree and then we say that we're coming from a mobile device, one thing it will do is it will strip off all the navigation to the left and the right, because that's just overcrowding the user interface. Okay, we'll let that go. We'll come back to that. Just so, oh, maybe it's going here. Okay, we'll let that come back. There we go. So redbud. Okay, I'm going to click on this, and we're going to see that I'm watching this over the web. Okay, take a moment, and we'll render that plant. And then as soon as I tell it's coming from mobile, it will change the look and feel a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording because I am uploading another video, so this is going to take a moment. I'm going to pause. I'll restart the recording once this page comes back. 1 moment. Of course, the very minute I hit pause, the page rendered. So here we are, what it looks like on a full website. Now, as soon as I go to the end of this URL and put ampersand source equals mobile, what it will do is it will take off. See if I got that in right. Okay, source equals mobile. What it will do is it will strip away the top nav and the side nav, because that's just a bit overwhelming for the user. Okay, and here we have it. You see the top nav and the left nav have been removed to make it a bit easier for the user. Okay, great. On the mobile device. An interesting one on Android, and this is one I see violated a lot. Support the back button without crashing. So you should always allow the user to go back without crashing the app, go back in history. Also, you can't have a second back button. You must use the back button that is on the Android device itself. That's one I wasn't aware of until I actually read the quality guidelines. So use the onboard back button. Don't create your own. Okay. Handle taps appropriately. There's a unit of measure called points, which is oftentimes equivalent to a pixel or a picture element. Apple considers 44 by 44 the points the minimum size of a tappable UI event. Underneath that, you tend to tap and you might miss your target. I see this a lot on mobile websites. A lot of times the links are so close together, you have to be very careful about which one you actually tap because it's easy to mistap. Okay? Use gestures more than clicks. Tap, drag, flick, swipe, pinch, touch, hold, shake. These are different gestures that we can use. It's much easier to do that on the phone than to tap all the time. Here again, this is something that where I know I could make some improvements to Plant Places mobile because I know that I tend to be old school because I was brought up old school, but I tend to overuse tapping where it would be easier to use dragging, flicking, things like that. So maybe when I have a better gallery of images on the file system, I can make better use of those different mobile gestures. Okay. jQuery is making things a lot easier on the web. Okay. Uh, Other standards of mobile don't duplicate what you already have. For example, language preferences in Android are held centrally. This was an interesting one for me. I thought I should do an online-offline toggle and allow the user to manually toggle online and offline. But then I realized, you know what? You can set offline in Android anyway. You can tell it no data. You can put it in airplane mode. Don't duplicate that. Similarly, and this is really handy if you're looking into internationalization, you can set your language preferences centrally, and the app will know to look in a specific folder for translations of all the text on your screen. You have to provide the text, but the app can handle that seamlessly. So don't duplicate what already exists. Okay? Rely on ease of use instead of verbose on-screen help. So don't offer a whole lot of help when you can just make the app easier to use and more intuitive instead. If there's a way to say, well, maybe I don't need this much help text, but the user can figure it out by making it easy, that's something we want to do. Okay, most apps have one window. They tend to take up the entire screen, so make the best use of this screen. Be careful that you don't add too much clutter. Okay, user experience guidelines. Again, this comes from Apple's website. I provided a link here. I paraphrased it a little bit. Okay, focus on the primary task. This is an important one. It's easy to clutter the screen too much. Ask yourself with each widget on the screen, do you need it right now for the activity that the user is doing? If not, can you remove it? Can you show it only when the user needs it? An example of this on Plant Places Mobile again, and unfortunately I'm not on that screen anymore, but on the GPS screen, the GPS of Plant screen, if you have not signed up for an account, a button appears on that screen asking you to sign up for an account. On the other hand, if you have signed up for the account and that account name is registered with the app, that button no longer appears because it's just clutter. Okay? So that button is context sensitive. It only appears when there is no account associated with the app. But as soon as you create the account, then the button disappears. Okay? Make search quick and rewarding. Autocomplete with local data. Remember I believe it was the last recording, but now I'm starting to lose count. I mentioned that the search screen will autocomplete. Okay? Not only will it autocomplete, but it uses a local copy of Plant Places data. So it doesn't actually have to do a network call. If it had to do a network call, it would take a lot more time. But what happens is when we search for plants, we spawn a new thread and we save that plant data locally and we use it in autocomplete. Here's the GPS screen, by the way. If I didn't have a user account, a button would appear right here asking the user to sign up for an account. Okay, so that's what that does. Okay, elevate the content people care about. Put the important stuff at the top. Fade controls after the user stopped using them. You're probably watching this on YouTube, and you know that when you start watching this, you have the play button and the pause button and the quality of the video, the screen size. Okay, As you're watching, usually the play button and the pause button fade away, and the little meter that shows how much you've watched. As you're watching, that tends to fade away. And then if you mouse over again, the buttons will come back up again. So move controls out of the way when possible. Okay. Okay. We talked about put the frequently information near the top so that we don't have to scroll. Easy and obvious usage, make the main function apparent. So focusing on one UI element will make the usage very obvious what we're trying to do. Use vernacular that the user will understand. Here's another example. I'm going to go back to the one of our websites we were looking at before. Sure enough, it's still giving us runtime error. Something that bothers me a bit about this. Let's say I go here, and hopefully the website isn't totally dead right now. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Advanced Search. Okay. And let's say I want to search for something. I want to search for some real estate. Well, so much for that example. Good, there we go. Now that was very interesting. Let's say I want to search for real estate in downtown Cincinnati. I scroll here, and I'm going to look for downtown or Cincinnati. And I don't see Cincinnati. Looks like I just passed it. I don't see Cincinnati. I see Cincinnati in parentheses. What city Cincinnati? Don't know what that means. Okay. Now I keep scrolling, and very curiously I see, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to see Dayton, downtown. Okay, now that makes sense. Downtown Dayton. That makes sense. Because it's downtown Dayton, shouldn't there be a downtown Cincinnati as well? Well, I scroll up, and again, it's different, right? We don't see an entry called Cincinnati downtown. Okay, what we eventually see is something called city. That means downtown, but you see it's inconsistent. It should be like we had Dayton downtown, there should be a Cincinnati downtown. So see, that's something I don't understand. That's something that, it's not speaking my language. On a similar note, we talked about the one-stop registration, okay? Call number. That's not user language. That's computer language or that's UC language, but call number means nothing to me. I don't know the call number for this class. It's irrelevant to me. It would be better if we had some direct way of linking from one-stop and the schedule of classes right into the course registration. That would be a lot more intuitive to me. Okay. Minimize user input. As we said, autocomplete is our big friend here. We start typing, the field auto-completes. Online, offline toggle. When the app goes offline, we want to be able to handle that seamlessly and minimize the impact to the user. We don't want to tell the user, hey, we've gone offline. We'd rather find a way to continue allowing the user to work with a local copy of data. A few more user experience guidelines. Brand appropriately. Have the app use your colors, but don't overdo it. So you don't want to have a big fat logo that's taking up a lot of real estate on your screen. It's easy to try to do that, but try to really minimize that. It's better to just have a color scheme and use that throughout your app. Again, this is something that Plant Places could probably do a better job of. I stuck with the default black background, thinking that might save battery juice. And by the way, battery juice is very expensive or very necessary on Plant Places Mobile. What might be a better idea is to use the cream and the green color that we've used in our logo. Use that instead as kind of a uniform color throughout the app. Okay? Entice and inform with a well-written description. That's on the App Store. Give it a nice, concise description on either the Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store, so that the user can see can see what's going on. And remember, a lot of times they're going to be downloading directly from the mobile device, so you want it to be something they can read quickly, gets the point across very quickly. Autosave, that's a nice one. If we look at, here's the YouTube. Here's my interface when I upload videos, and you see it's uploading the ones that I've recorded earlier tonight. What's nice about this is when I go and I make changes, what it will do I'll go ahead and click on more. So I'm gonna come over here. So I'm trying to fit this all on our screen. Whoops, I went off screen. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come over here, and it by default does a pretty good job of guessing what I want to call this. It takes the name of the file, and I just need to go through and put some spaces in. Intro to mobile, whoops, part 6, colon, 8 design principles. Okay, so we'll say UI as a description, UI design for mobile apps. We'll see as I'm doing this, we're going to get something down at the bottom. There'll be a little save button, and it says all changes saved. Okay. What's nice is that when I'm typing and it hasn't saved, it will give me a warning to tell me that there are some changes that haven't been saved yet. So let's see if I can get this on one screen. We'll go ahead and pick this as the thumbnail. There we go. Some changes are not yet saved, and then in a moment, all changes are saved. So we see that as I'm making changes to the YouTube listing here, it will periodically go in and save them automatically. It will auto-save. Okay. Be prepared to stop. What you don't want to do is put a whole bunch of stuff in memory and then assume the user's going to gracefully close your app. Batteries run dead. Apps crash. Be prepared for this. Okay. So don't always plan on a graceful exit. Modal tasks, anything that pop up that blocks the user from doing work, make them occasional, make them simple. Don't overuse a modal task that prevents the user from doing further work. Okay. Don't stop programmatically. What this means is don't kill your program without letting the user know. Okay. Don't kill the program. You might think, oh, why would I do that? It's actually pretty easy to do if you don't do anything to prevent it. You have to handle exceptions. What happens if you try to contact a website or some kind of network resource and you don't have network connectivity? What do? If you don't properly handle that, it could crash your app. So make sure you're handling these exceptional conditions. Maybe the SD card is out. What do you do when there's no SD card? Do you crash, or do you find another way to work? Okay, what is a good other way to work if you do lose network connectivity? A very good option is to fall back on your local copy of data. So remember, we want to maybe keep some local data. That's a good time we'd want to use it if we lose our network access. Okay? Startup, do it fast. Fast startup. Don't put a splash screen just for splash screen's sake. Okay, we want to start up as quickly as we need. If we can avoid having the user log in until needed, that's a good idea. Let the user go ahead and navigate into the app for a while. As soon as it requires some personalization, then prompt the user to log in. Okay? Try to avoid prompting for setup information. Focus on the needs that most users are going to want to see right away. So don't do things like set up your first screen. A better idea would be to learn, what does the user tend to access frequently? What screen does the user tend to access frequently? Once you've figured that out, just give that to the user. Okay? Give that to the user as the first screen. So the first few times the user uses your app, the user always goes to GPS a plant. Maybe if the user's done that 5 times in a row, go ahead and make that the first screen. Okay. Get information from other sources. As I mentioned, it used to be that you would have to set your location many times. Now, why do that? Use the latitude and longitude, make an educated guess, and then set the location for the user, but then give the user the opportunity to change. Okay. And then if you restart the app, restore the state where the user was last. So those are a lot of Apple's usability guidelines. Very nice. If we take a look at Android's, we'll see they're very close. Android has basically 3 principles of vision. Enchant the user. Make it aesthetically pleasing. Use personalization. Use real objects instead of text and things like that, like folders in the file system, as opposed to our old school DOS command prompt. Okay? Remember past experiences. So if the user keeps going to the GPS screen, eventually make that the first screen. Okay? Simplify. Make it intuitive, easy to learn. Rely on intuition instead of very verbose help. Use short phrases when you can. Don't go into a lot of detail. Say, we need to contact Google to update your information. Just say, we can't contact Google. We'll save it later. Something like that. Try to use good grammar. Grammar means economy of words. Cut down on excessive words. Okay, so use good grammar, use short phrases, don't get very verbose. Pictures are better than words. They get a point across very quickly. Provide transitions from screen to screen. Only show what is needed. Remember the iOS guideline that do you really need it on this screen? If not, save it until the user asks for it. Autosave, we just talked about that. Only prompt the user when absolutely needed. All of these very, very similar to the guidelines we just went through for Apple. So, that's what I say. We can kind of hit fast forward on this part because we've talked about a lot of these. Amaze the user. Try new things. Make it easy to share from one app to another. Share some information. Promote learning. When the user figures something out, be sure to use that same template throughout your application. As I said on Plant Places Mobile, we use the exact same search screen in about 5 different steps. Or 5 different parts of the app. So once you've learned the search screen and what it does, you now know that and you now understand other parts of the app as well. Fix errors automatically or help the user diagnose. I was just talking about going offline. If you lose a network connection, you don't want to crash. A better option might be to fix it yourself. Have the application fix it. How can the application possibly fix something out of its control like going offline? Well, what it can do is it can fail over and use a local copy of the data without the user even knowing. If you do have the Plant Places app on your phone, once you've searched for a few plants and you've populated that local copy of data, if you switch the phone to offline mode, there's still a lot of things that work. You can still GPS plants entirely offline. You can't do search by color. You can't go to plant results because that does require a web connection, but many other parts of the app will continue to work. Okay, do the hard work for the user. Don't give the user a bunch of controls and say, okay, figure out what to do. Make some suggestions. Say, well, we've tried to, like I said on the search by color, instead of showing the user every single color, we just show the top 12 and say, okay, go ahead and pick one. Okay, make important things fast. Focus on important things. Android has basically what it considers some 4 significant UI components. The main action bar is at the top of the screen usually. The split action bar is at the bottom of the screen. These will have more actions. So actions are things that the user can do. Also at the top of the screen we'll have what's called a view control many times. Not always, but many times it will. It'll help us quickly navigate to other parts of the app. Okay? And then the content area is what falls within the middle. So these aren't mandatory, but you'll find them in a lot of Android apps. You'll find that kind of theme in a lot of Android apps. Finally, writing style. Keep it brief, 30-character limit. Again, I violate some of this on Plant Places Mobile. I know there are some places where I have very long warnings, which could be shorter. Keep it brief, keep it simple. Be friendly, talk to the user, use the word you a lot. Don't say things that are trite like sorry. Okay, explain what's going on, but keep it simple. If you have text, many times the user's just going to read the first few words and skip the rest, so put the important stuff first. One thing I learned back when I was in college in the 90s, if you want the user to read and comprehend something like an email, write a bunch of, and this is not mobile, this is just otherwise, but write a bunch of short paragraphs, 2 to 3 line paragraphs. If you want the user to ignore information, write a small number of very long paragraphs. Now you can use this to your advantage. If I'm asking a question of a coworker, especially in a different country, I will write a lot of short paragraphs and try to get to the point. Make sure they all get read. If there's something I really don't want to tell someone, I'll bury it in a humongously large paragraph. So use that same principle here. Put the very important stuff first, make it short so that the user can see it. Describe only what's needed. Avoid repetition. So don't repeat a word. Don't have a title that says the application had an error, and then within the descriptive text say there was an error. That would be repetitive. So a few notes on writing style. So that is an overview of some of the guidelines for usability, both Apple and Android. Very important things to consider very early on in your app. We see that they both are very similar to the eight principles of the GUI bloopers book that we talked about at first. We started with that. We saw that the iOS human interface guidelines are very similar to that. And then we saw that the Android user interface guidelines are also very similar to iOS. So for more information on these, take a look at the references within this PowerPoint presentation. Take a look at those. A lot of good information there. Think about this very, very seriously before starting on your app for two reasons. It's easier to design first and then write the app than to write the app and then find your design mistakes. You'll spend a lot less time on your app if you design first. Number two, remember that users are going to be rating your app. You want to give them an app that's easy for them to use and understand. Okay, so following good usability guidelines will help you do that. So this is recording number 7. If you would, please fill out quiz question suggestions before Friday. I want to say, what day is Friday? At the time I'm recording this, it's going to be Friday, July 12th. If you're watching this for a later class, of course, it will be a later date. But Friday the 12th at 6 o'clock, 3 quiz question suggestions and any questions you have on this presentation itself. Again, thank you for tuning in.